That's right. Whatever the hell Rachel Maddow tells me, I'll just do whatever the hell she says. I mean, she makes $100,000 per episode. She must know what the hell she's talking about. She must know, be able to relate to me. On NBC, MSNBC, there's some guy that said 13 Russians who put a bunch of badass memes on Facebook is the exact same as 9/11 and Pearl Harbor combined. Really, the Russians paid for what? You know, it's Russia today is the only one that's actually telling us the goddamn truth anyways. So, mainstream media, maybe you want to actually start telling us the damn truth. Hell, I do whatever the hell mainstream media tells me to do anyways. Hubert Humphrey, really? 1968 Democrats? Hubert Humphrey, the same year that you had Martin Luther King, Robert F. Kennedy get assassinated. The best the Democrats could do is Hubert motherfucking Humphrey? Huh, it almost makes you feel like somebody did that shit intentionally. That'd be like wiping out Bernie so Hillary gets elected. After writing the U.S. Constitution, James Madison became a House representative for Virginia. When he wrote the Constitution, birthday caceres, what did birthday caceres ever do to anybody? It's a birthday, I'm glad birthday is gone. That's why I voted for Hillary Clinton, to get rid of all the birthday caceres out of Hunter. Get rid of the Electoral College. We have to abolish executive orders. War powers are completely centralized. We need to get the war powers back to Congress. We might just have to rewrite the whole damn thing. We need to get the people of Washington, D.C. some congressional representation. We got to delete the fugitive slave clause, the 3/5 clause, and the slave trade clause. It's still in our U.S. Constitution. No wonder there's institutionalized racism. We need to repeal the 11th Amendment. We need to either allow rents, dividends, and interest to be taxed, or we need to abolish the 16th Amendment. There's no term limits for senators or members of Congress. We need term limits. The threshold for the amendment process, constitutional conventions are too damn high. There's no right to privacy, no right to unionize, no right to food, water, clothing, shelter, and a bed. We got a right to gerrymander, though. We need voter rights restored after the sentence has been served. We need to update this thing. The 12th Amendment changes a portion of our Article 2. The last thing is the recall, referendum, initiative. The last things. Recall, referendum, and initiative. These are democratic tools that are not embedded in the U.S. Constitution because it's not for democracy. A republic is a representative democracy. So for police brutality, we need to have the rule of law codified. Thou shalt not murder, nor rape. If thou murders or rapes, thou must have a trial. Doesn't matter if you got a badge or not. You murdered somebody? Okay, it was in self-defense. That's fine. Tell a jury that. And I'm sure we'll believe you. We'll believe you. Go through the same damn process you make everybody else go through. That's only fair. That's the rule of law, actually. But if we don't live in a democracy, who gives a shit about the rule of law? And then the last thing, establish a Rights and Freedom Protection Bureau. The Patriot Act takes away the 4th Amendment. And then we have many First Amendment infringements. You can't dance, you can't sing, you can't laugh. If you laugh at somebody, apparently now you could go to jail. They talked about the homeless. And the first thing that they mention is like, well, and they choose to be homeless. Get the fuck out of here. Nobody chooses to sleep in sub-zero temperatures, to sleep in a fucking ditch. You're telling me that they had the option of living in a house, living in a nice house that had food, water, clothing, and, warmth, and a bed. And they said, no, we don't want that. That's bullshit. Now, if there was a house and somebody else was living in that house and they said, you got to do this and you got to do that, right, make them obedient to your fucking bullshit, as if that's the best way to survive in this society, to be obedient. Get the fuck out of here. Some homeless choose to be homeless. The reason why people say that, because if they choose to be homeless, well, you don't have to give a flying fuck then. Well, they chose to be homeless. No, I don't have to give a shit. But you chose that, right? There's kids. There's like 100 kids or so, 100,000. What's the number? With James Madison. James Madison was for the Bill of Rights after he was against them. So he goes up to the Constitutional Convention, the Articles of Confederation, like, in Shays' Rebellion, you had all these veterans who were saying, we should be paid for our efforts in the war, and then George Washington was like, nah, we can't allow them to, rebel against the bankers. So the rich merchant politician class, right, essentially the lobbyists, and so they went there and made a Constitutional Convention. James Madison's there, and the arguments against the Bill of Rights are so stupid. You had Alexander Hamilton. His argument against the Bill of Rights was, well, if you enumerate them, if you write down the rights, well, then what about our natural rights? If you write down what rights are ours and what rights aren't ours, then by writing some of the rights, if you admit some of them, then people might say, well, hell, then you don't have a right to breathe, you know? So the other argument for Alexander Hamilton, since we wrote down freedom of speech and the, freedom to petition and the freedom of religion, because we wrote down some of those freedoms, when we have a right to unionize, which is a human right, it's not codified in the U.S. Constitution. Therefore, we don't have those rights at all. Because, apparently if you write it's such a dumb, I don't even like repeating it because it hurts my head. It's basically, I don't want the Bill of Rights, and I'm just saying some fucking bullshit, and hopefully somebody believes my bullshit. James Madison, he had said that you can't get the Bill of Rights now. We've already written the Constitution. If you write the Bill of Rights, it'll change everything. So, which is stupid. You put the Bill of Rights in the thing or do it afterwards. But James Madison is going to change his mind. And when he runs to become the representative for Virginia, he promises to get us a Bill of Rights. And then the Bill of Rights is added into the thing, and then now we get some of these older clips, and somebody had mentioned, and then we're here for the Constitution. And then people are like, they all celebrate it, but it's kind of like, y'all really don't know what the hell's in that document at all, do you? It's only like 10 pages. You probably should read it. Check it out, America. It's not that. It's actually a shitty piece of document. It's not Walt Whitman, okay? It's not Henry David Thoreau. It's not Ralph Waldo Emerson. Eleanor Roosevelt, she should have been recruited to write some of those Bill of Rights in the Second Constitution, the Second American Revolution. But the U.S. Constitution, seriously, it's a boring-ass document. It is one of the worst documents I've ever read. If you're going to read something, like I said, song of myself. I loaf and I invite my soul. I celebrate myself. But if you don't want to read poetry, well, here's a couple of sentences from the preamble to promote domestic tranquility and, to make life all wonderful. Then it goes to Section 1. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. Section 2. 1. The House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people of the several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. 2. No person shall be a representative who shall not have attained to the age of 25 years and been 7 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state in which he shall be chosen. 3. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included within this union according to the respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons. You guys, yet all I did was read the first fucking 3 sentences. So I wanted to actually get to this one part where let's see, they're counting up the respective numbers for Congress. So they're saying you got to add up the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a number of years. So indentured servants, and excluding Indians, not taxed. So if you're not getting taxed Indians, and you're not going to be counted for their representation, and then 3/5 of all other persons, 3/5 of all the slaves, the black folks. So that's, we only got 4 sentences into this damn document. It's already fucking racist as fuck. God damn this racist document. We should be wiping our asses with this shit. We don't even have our freedoms anyways. The 4th Amendment was severed and destroyed by the Patriot Act. The War Powers Clause, have we ever declared a war? Since World War II, we just been bombing everybody without any arrested for laughing or for dancing. So we don't have the First Amendment, so 5,432 wars that we're in. Congress never declared war on any of those. The NDAA, now because of indefinite detention, if you're a suspected terrorist, they could just keep you in Guantanamo Bay forever. Elena Keegan said that we can hold immigrants indefinitely too. So we have a lot of problems, okay? This document allows homelessness on the streets, it allows war, it allows gerrymandering, it allows torture, but we don't have a right to privacy. It doesn't protect our right to privacy. It doesn't protect our right to not be tortured. There's no right to food, water, clothing, shelter. We have a right to life, but we got to, secure that life for ourselves. So we don't have a right to food, water, clothing, shelter, and a bed. We don't have a right to unionize, which is a human right, an inherent, natural human right. Top of my list here. So the first thing is we don't have fair elections. The whole point of the U.S. Constitution was to make sure you stupid motherfuckers did not vote. In the beginning, if you were black, if you're a woman, if you're a white male who did not own property, you're nobody. You're not going to vote. Get the fuck out of here. And then even then, you had the property owners, so you only had, what, 10% of the population, the rich white male aristocracy who was allowed to vote. But even then, after the rabble, which is, whatever, the Electoral College was put there to refine that vote in case the people fucked up, and then the electors can undo the election because the rich white male aristocracy didn't vote the right way. So this thing is elitism on top of elitism. This is a Byzantine type of, old-style document. It's the Senate. It's some Federalist Papers quote, but you're just going to have to believe me on this. The Electoral College was there to refine the opinion of the so-called masses, but in the beginning, right, no black folks, no women, no Native Americans, basically 90% of the country did not have the right to vote. So that shows me that there is no democracy. They don't care about democracy. They don't want people to actually, join in their government. So right off the bat, they're already excluding people, and then the Electoral College is added to even make it more exclusionary. And so if you read the Federalist Papers, it straight up just basically says, if the rabble, if the damn people fuck it up, so the whole point of the Electoral College is to throw out a Donald Trump or a Hillary Clinton. If the electors, did not like the presidential candidate, you can overturn the election to undo the popular vote. So a lot of times they don't go, the good faith voters or bad faith voters. They don't always. Things a lot more complicated. I don't know how to become an elector. I mean, you have to be buddy-buddy with the two-party system. The Democrats, Republicans are the ones that get to pick the electors for whatever reason. The process is confusing to me. So, if I don't know it, then I would say probably a lot of other people don't know it too. Abolish. We got to get rid of this Electoral College. Fuck this Electoral College. The fact that both George, baby Bush and Donald was elected without the popular vote. So we're the greatest democracy in the world. What the majority of the American people said, we want Hillary, we want Al Gore. The majority of the people, the popular vote, wanted those two candidates. But because the Electoral College were like, well, okay, yeah, sure, the majority win unless we fuck it all up with the Electoral College. That's our system. Hey, it's all fucked up anyways. Who gives a shit, right? So we played by the Electoral College system. It's confusing. It's that's just because you're mad. No, I'm not mad because I lost. I just think it's on principle. By principle, the Electoral College is a shitty fucking institution. It's so fucking shitty. And, I mean, just think about this. So this would be an argument for the Republicans. When Donald and, baby Bush got elected, the Electoral College could have flipped it. So we had the election in November, and then the electors all got together for the formal vote to essentially just validate how their states had voted. But they're allowed to vote however they wanted to vote. And that's the whole point of the Electoral College, is when the people fuck up, then the Electoral College could just nullify the people's vote and undo it. So if you remember, when Donald got elected, then everybody was pushing for the Electoral College to undo the thing. So you like the Electoral College? I mean, in a way, I guess you were able to use the electoral system to win, but the Electoral College, if it was used effectively, could have nullified your candidate. Nope, the electors voted for somebody else. Jill Stein, they all got together and said, what's the point about the Electoral College? Electoral College is only a handful of people. I think it's the same number as your representatives. So for Colorado, it's only a handful. I don't know exactly, but say 7. Say there's 7 electors in Colorado. That means all the people in Colorado that voted, none of your votes fucking mattered. It was only those 7 electors. The only votes that mattered were the 7 electors. Now, the 7 electors based their vote upon the majority of those that had voted in their state, but according to our Constitution, they don't have to. They don't have to. They can vote for whoever the fuck they want to vote for. Now, we don't have fair elections on many fronts. We don't have a paper trail. There's no paper ballots. We don't have government finance campaigns. All this big money gets thrown into it, and you're telling me any poor working class person has a chance in this system? And then instant runoff voting would allow for independents to have a chance. But right now, with the two-party duopoly, the two-party dictatorship, nobody gives, nobody's going to, they laugh at the independents. What, you're an independent? You think for yourself? For tyranny, every president signs 1 million fucking executive orders. Every fucking president. Executive orders? That's tyranny. That person says, here's the law. What, you just wrote that on a piece of paper while you were taking a shit, and now that's the law of the land? It sure is. So millions of it, and they all do it. Every single one of them has thousands of executive orders. So it's ridiculous. And I don't know if it's because we're at war, so therefore they got war powers. That's another thing, the reason not to be at war. Why do you want, Donald to have unlimited power? You want him to have unlimited power. He could suspend habeas corpus, right? Lincoln was allowed to do it because it was during war. You have so many extra powers during wartime than if you're not in war. So millions of executive orders, that's completely tyrannical. We haven't declared war since World War II. So since World War II, since we defeated the Nazis for, 70 fucking years? But we've been at war for 70 years. How's that? Law means that no matter who you are, you have to abide by the rule of law. It doesn't matter if you're rich, it doesn't matter if you're wealthy or poor, or if thou shall not steal, whatever, a watch off of somebody's arm. If you're rich and wealthy, you still can't do it. If you're poor, you still can't do it. If that's the rule, you cannot steal watches off of people's arms. That's the rule. So with the U.S. Constitution, the rule of law says the only way that the United States can go to war is if Congress declares war. Now, they've been saying that the authorization to use military force from 2001 is the reason why we're allowed to invade Gabon and Niger and Cameroon and all these nations. You know we're fighting, we've invaded Cameroon, you all. We're invading Cameroon. Yay? I mean, what the fuck are we doing there? We're not saying what the mission is. It's all secret, right? Because to be a good military commander, you got to keep it all a secret. Don't tell anybody what the hell you're doing. D.C. has no representation. Talk about taxation without representation. In the capital of the United States, Washington, D.C. has no representation. You did get the 23rd Amendment, a couple of years ago, that allowed Washington, D.C., the residents of D.C., to vote for the presidency. They weren't even allowed to vote for the president until that amendment. But even though they are now allowed to vote for the president, they still don't get any congressmen or women or senators. They get no representation in Congress whatsoever. They get a vote, right? They get, a couple electors. Actually, they don't get a vote for president. They get a vote for the the electors who get to go to the Electoral College to actually vote for the president. So all those people that went to the ballot box or you filled out your written ballot, you didn't vote for president, right? The Electoral College did. Now, 600,000 people live in the district. 600,000 people. Before it was one every 30,000. Every 30,000. The way the legality of it works is that Congress controls all of D.C. But if you're in D.C. and you pay taxes, you serve in the military, you don't have congressional representative. I don't know if that's any better. I got Scott Tipton, which is basically like having nobody. So I don't know if that's any better. If anything, at least the people in D.C. know that there's nobody out there fighting for them. They have no representatives whatsoever. The Constitution did not provide for Washington, D.C., the residents of D.C., to have any representation. Right on the face of it, right? You get into it, automatically you get to the Fugitive Slave Clause, the 3/5 clause, and the Slave Trade Clause. So it's racist on its face. We didn't erase these things. So essentially we add on amendments, and then like the 18th and the 21st Amendment, we can undo an amendment by 3/5 clause is when they were counting, for every 30,000 people, we were supposed to get one representative. They undid that in 1911. But for every 30,000 people, we were supposed to have a representative per 30,000. And they rewrote so 3/5 of the citizens, that's Article 1, Section 2, Fugitive Slave Clause of the U.S. Constitution is either Slave Clause or Fugitives from Labor Clause. Article 4, Section 2, it says a person is held to service or labor, which is a slave, apprentice, indentured servant, who flees to another state must be returned to the owner in the state from which that person escaped. The passage of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution abolished slavery as a punishment, so basically turned that clause into dust. But it's still there. It's still there, dude. We didn't erase it. We didn't scratch it out. If you read the Constitution, the black people are still only 3/5 of a person. Trade Clause 2, there's a ban on slavery. And George Washington is overseeing this entire thing. So George Washington, he owned 300 slaves. Is there any chance that he was not raping those slaves? So he's like, oh my God, if any of these slaves that, he's raping runs over to another state, he wants to be able to get his slave back so he can continue to rape them. That's what George Washington, that's the reason why this document was written with the Fugitive Slave Clause, 3/5, black people are only 3/5 of a person because, you know, slaves, they can't vote, but the South still wanted to get more representatives. So they weren't going to let them be people. They weren't going to let them be citizens, but they did want more representation in Congress. So, yeah, you can be a person, but only 3/5 of a person. It could have been a tricky thing because 3/5 is a majority, so you would just round up, right? Let's see, are you a person or not? Well, you're 3/5 of a person. You're mostly a person, so 3/5 clause. You have the fugitive slave clause, and then you have the slave trade clause. So we got several clauses in here protecting the institution of slavery. No point do they say slavery. They don't want to put that out there that it's okay to be. No. But see, clause 1, the migration and importation of such persons. So the slave trade clause, Article 1, Section 9, bans a ban on slavery. So there's some people back in, you know, George Washington's time that was opposed to slavery. Can you imagine? Hell, there's people in Kentucky that's still in favor of black people being slaves. And yet, back in 1789, there were northern states and abolitionists. John Adams was against slavery. So when we, you know, forgive George Washington for his slave raping fucking bullshit behavior, we ignore the good people such as John Adams, and I want to say Alexander Hamilton was opposed to Pennsylvania. I mean, these are whole states. The entire states were against. The slave trade clause said that we're going to allow the slave trade. We're allowed to buy slaves from Africa for another 20 years, for 19 years. This is 1789 until 1808, and it says the year 1808. But a tax or a duty may be imposed on such importation, not exceeding $10 per each person. So you can't get more institutionalized slavery than that. So yeah, for the next 20 years, we'll let you go ahead and buy all the black people that you want to buy from Africa, and we'll let you, but we might tax you, but only $10 a person. So this is totally pro-slavery, and this shit is still in there. So just like the 18th and the 21st Amendment, the 18th Amendment says prohibition, no fucking alcohol. But instead of just deleting it and erasing it, we had to pass another law in order to undo that law. That doesn't make any sense. This is like the first draft, and we just keep rewriting it and scratching. Incredible. You have the 12th Amendment changes some of the laws, and then the 20th Amendment changes the 12th Amendment. So it just, even the laws that build upon each other are kind of complicated, and yet we have some laws that are contradicting each other. Oh, remember the 18th Amendment? Yeah, no more 18th Amendment. So then why do we have, I mean, why even have both of those amendments? Just delete the 18th, the 19th becomes the 18th, you know what I mean? So just kind of put them, just stack them up in order. And with the fugitive slave, scratch that shit out. Rewrite it, right? My God, this is like a retarded person who just keeps writing the first draft over and over again, and they don't want to change anything because, what, for future generations, I want them to know every mistake that I've made. No, what we do in class, right, you rewrite a document, the teacher puts the red marks on it, you rewrite the document. That's what we should have been doing the whole time, rewriting this shit. Get rid of that racist bullshit. Get that rid of the amendment that the Hillary Clinton Democrats do not understand. And probably not, I mean, Donald's dumber, right? So anything Hillary Democrats don't understand, the Republicans are going to understand. The 11th Amendment, they said that we now have the right for the 11th Amendment, that it's not a right, it's an anti-right. And the anti-right is that we cannot sue a state. So I'm in Colorado right now. If Nevada was to bomb my house, the state of Nevada, for whatever reason, they were aiming for a terrorist, right? They thought some terrorist was over by my house and they dropped the bomb. I can't sue them by way of federal court. I cannot use the federal government to sue another state. And it also says that, like Germans can't use the federal government to sue us too. That makes more sense to me. But if Nevada bombs my house, I'd like some sort of recourse. I'm actually perplexed that the 11th Amendment was ratified by all the states. The 11th Amendment is against individual rights and individual freedoms. It says the individual cannot sue another state by using the federal courts. So that's bullshit. The 11th Amendment needs to be gotten rid of. The whole reason, there's a whole history to it, but it's essentially to prevent one person from, so a state can take away, so Nevada could take away the rights of the citizens of Colorado, and we can't sue them. I think that's fucking bullshit. That's bullshit. We need to repeal the 11th Amendment. The 11th Amendment is just fucking bullshit. The 16th Amendment, this is the income tax, so now they can, tax our incomes, but not rents, not dividends, and not interest. So for rich people, right? Rich rents, rich dividends, rich interest. 12th Amendment changed a portion of Article 2, Section 1, and then a portion of the 12th Amendment was changed by the 20th Amendment. So really nobody knows what the hell is going on. We need to rewrite the thing just so we're on the exact same page. I mean, that would be amazing. Constitution is so we're all on the same page, a nice simple guidelines about how we're supposed to organize our society. And thank God we got the Bill of Rights. We initially weren't going to get those Bill of Rights. So the fact that we're, bequeathed as citizens of this country all these rights, and yet most of the American people don't even read them, so they only know what rights they have, at least they're constitutionally protected, versus the ones that they don't have. We don't have a right to privacy. We don't have a right to unionize. We don't have a right to food, water, clothing, shelter, and a bed. We do have, a right to be tortured, and for gerrymandering, we have a right for gerrymandering all day long. We could torture all day long. We could take away voters' rights and never restrict term limits for senators and members of Congress. So you get these entrenched, powerful people who have all the money and the power, and they just stand there for 30, 40, 50 years, right? So we have a 95% incumbency rate, meaning if you got the job, if you're already a mayor, or if you're already a city councilman, if you're already the dog catcher, you're going to be the dog catcher next year, because Americans aren't going to change. They're not going to, get anybody new in there. If you already got the power, you're just going to keep the power. I can't even imagine, think of in North Korea. North Korea, you had, Kim Jong-un eventually, acceded the throne, right? So they don't have 100%. I guess upon death, that's probably an easy one. But anyways, I mean, to think 95%, we have the option to look at our public officials and toss them overboard, but 95% of the time, the 18% of the people that do vote keep those assholes in there. So no new ideas, no new blood, just the same old shit. Process in the Constitutional Convention to change the Constitution is too damn hard. The threshold is too high. We've had 27 total amendments, at least that's what we've been told. But the 18th Amendment, the 21st Amendment, they undo each other, so that's, subtract those two. So we only got 25 amendments. And then the first 10 amendments were passed right after the Constitution was written. And so they're kind of, I put the Bill of Rights in the, original document. Those things they're the one, that we don't want to change this shit because it's sacred, so we don't want to change none of this shit. So the Bill of Rights was put in there, right away. So I feel like they're kind of the same shit. So that's 15 amendments. We've changed our Constitution 15 times in 250 years or so. And the last time we did was in 92. So it's hard. It's difficult. You have to get 2/3 of both houses, and then you got to get 2/3 of all the states to ratify the damn thing. The Constitution also, for some reason, seems to allow cops to murder whoever the hell they want to. That Tennessee cop said, hell yeah. He loves that shit. He loves shooting white men who are guilty of misdemeanor traffic infractions. And the Constitution allows homeless Americans to starve and die on our streets. We don't have a recall. We don't have referendum. We don't have initiative. These are democratic tools that are not in the U.S. Constitution. But to be honest, I mean, sure, we don't have the right to unionize or right to food, water, clothing, or freedom from torture. We don't have those rights. We don't have a right to privacy, but we do have a right to gerrymander. So fantastic, right? Wonderful. I mean, when you got the right to gerrymander, who gives a shit if you got the right to privacy? Am I right? So, yeah. The U.S. Constitution is, I don't know. To get rid of the Electoral College, we have to abolish executive orders. War powers are completely centralized. We need to get the war powers back to Congress. We might just have to rewrite the whole damn thing. We need to get the people of Washington, D.C. some congressional representation. We got to delete the fugitive slave clause, the 3/5 clause, and the slave trade clause. It's still in our U.S. Constitution. No wonder there's institutionalized racism. We need to repeal the 11th Amendment. We need to either allow rents, dividends, and interest to be taxed, or we need to abolish the 16th Amendment. There's no term limits for senators or members of Congress. We need term limits. The threshold for the amendment process, constitutional conventions are too damn high. There's no right to privacy, no right to unionize, no right to food, water, clothing, shelter, and a bed. We got a right to gerrymander, though. We need voter rights restored after the sentence has been served. We need to update this thing. The 12th Amendment changes a portion of our Article 2. The last thing is the recall, referendum, initiative. The last things. Recall, referendum, and initiative. These are democratic tools that are not embedded in the U.S. Constitution because it's not for democracy. A republic is a representative democracy. So for police brutality, we need to have the rule of law codified. Thou shalt not murder, nor rape. If thou murders or rapes, thou must have a trial. Doesn't matter if you got a badge or not. You murdered somebody? Okay, it was in self-defense. That's fine. Tell a jury that, and I'm sure we'll believe you. We'll believe you. Go through the same damn process you make everybody else go through. That's only fair. That's the rule of law, actually. But if we don't live in a democracy, who gives a shit about the rule of law? And then the last thing, establish a Rights and Freedom Protection Bureau. The Patriot Act takes away the 4th Amendment. And then we have many First Amendment infringements. You can't dance, you can't sing, you can't laugh. If you laugh at somebody, apparently now you could go to jail.